Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon. I call the meeting to order for the May 11th study session. Madam Clerk?
I will be conducting the roll call verbally. Councilmember Brenner. Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Dixon
Here.
via Zoom. Councilmember Blom.
Here.
Councilmember Duffield is currently absent. Mayor Pro Tem Muldoon is on his way from the parking structure, and Mayor Avery.
Here. Thank you. All right, now we'll turn to current business, and the first item is clarification of items on the consent calendar. Ms. Brenner?
I would just like to clarify on the item number 6, which is the dissolution of the CDM bid, that citizens were concerned because the bid had provided the holiday decorations in the business district of Corona del Mar, and that an agreement is being worked out between Visit Newport Beach and the CDM Chamber and the city to make sure that those holiday decorations remain in place, because Visit Newport Beach feels like it enhances the whole ambiance of the city, which contributes to their boat parade festivities. So it's a nice agreement between all of them to continue that. And Melanie could speak to it more clearly, but actually the bid members are getting a fairly significant bit of their fee back. And our restaurant bid is continuing, and so some of the restaurants in Corona del Mar that were paying a bid fee for 2 different bids and a chamber membership and perhaps a Newport Beach chamber membership, it's going to be a lot easier for those restaurants, hopefully, and we'd like to make it as easy as possible. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. O'Neill?
None, thank you.
Ms. Dixon?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Blom?
None, thank you, Mayor.
And I thought Mr. Muldoon was in the parking lot. Okay. All right. And I have none. Okay. So the next item is a proclamation for Public Works Week. And everybody knows that we have an incredible public works department here in the city of Newport Beach. And I'll read the proclamation. Whereas public works professionals focus on the city's infrastructure, facilities, and public services that are essential to a maintainable, attractive, and robust community, and to the public welfare, safety, and well-being of the people of the city of Newport Beach. And whereas public works professionals, managers, and employees of all levels of government and the private sector whose efforts are essential for constructing, rebuilding, maintaining, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, buildings, and other structures and facilities fundamental to our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and visitors of Newport Beach to expand their knowledge of and to maintain an interest in the understanding of the importance of infrastructure and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, be it now, therefore, I, Brad Avery, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16 through 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week in the City of Newport Beach. And I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and the governmental agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to acknowledge all of our public works professionals and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. So that pretty much sums it up.
if I could just acknowledge and thank the council for your support. This is a great week for us, the 110 plus Public Works employees that work for the city. Very proud to work with them, doing a great job, and we really thank you, your council, and our residents for supporting that effort. It takes a team, and we're here to help and keep things running. So thank you very much for the acknowledgement.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Next up is a presentation by Amber Simrow, Director of Scientific Technical Services from the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and Council and all in attendance. Really appreciate this opportunity to come and share with you about mosquitoes in the county and in your city. As you mentioned, I am the Director of Scientific Technical Services for the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District. So a little bit about the district. We were first established in 1947 as the Mosquito Abatement District here for Orange County. We are an independent special district governed by the California Health and Safety Code, and we do serve the whole entire county. So that includes all 34 cities and unincorporated areas of the county. So we have quite a large board, 35 board members, 34 representatives, one from each city, including Council Member Brenner here for your city, and we have a representative for the county at large as well. We have a $15.5 million budget, and we serve the 3.2 million residents and the tens of millions of visitors, of course, that come and enjoy our county. So I want to talk to you about the mosquitoes currently in the county that are really either spreading disease or reaping havoc on our quality of life, really. We've got some new invasive species that are of concern. So first and foremost, the southern house mosquito, which is the brown mosquito that you see there on the screen, is the primary transmitter of West Nile virus here in Orange County. So we are very concerned with the spread of that mosquito, and we do a lot of work surrounding suppressing those mosquitoes when we see West Nile activity in the county. The other two mosquitoes that you see there on the screen are invasive mosquitoes. We call them the invasive Aedes mosquitoes, Aedes as in 80s. That is the name of the genus of those mosquitoes. These mosquitoes are capable of transmitting other diseases that we currently do not see here in Orange County, and that can include Zika, dengue, also yellow fever, chikungunya, and they also can transmit dog heartworm as well. Those mosquitoes are day-biting mosquitoes, and they're small black and white mosquitoes.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, of course.
On that last slide with the 80s, I seem to recall, a few years ago we had a case of Zika. Am I remembering that right?
So there was a Zika outbreak in Florida in 2015 and into 2016. In Orange County, we never had any local transmission, but sometimes we did have travelers returning from areas.
Okay.
And so no local transmission here.
Good to know. Thank you.
So last year in 2020, pertaining to West Nile virus, this is what the activity looked like here in the county. You can see on the map there, we did have 284 batches or pools of mosquitoes that tested positive for West Nile virus. We had 9 people that became sick, and one of those folks unfortunately passed away of West Nile last year. We have an extensive testing program for dead birds, and 38 of the dead birds that we collected tested positive. Fortunately, there was no West Nile activity in the city of Newport Beach last year. Over the course of these last 17 years, West Nile virus entered the county in 2003, and we started to see human cases in 2004, as indicated by the graph here. So we did have some modest years of cases in 2004, 2008, 12, and in 2014 and 15, we had back-to-back epidemics. in those years, in particular in 2014, we were the single jurisdiction in the nation with the highest number of cases that year, with 280 cases and 8 people passed away. So, we have really focused and geared our program since, those severe epidemic times at, seeing what we could do to really mitigate disease when we see spikes in West Nile activity. So, as we reviewed our data, we noticed that most of that activity was happening in a number of cities that you see listed on the screen here. We call this the high-risk area of the county. In that red ellipse that you see on the screen is where about 85% of the West Nile activity occurs here in the city, or in the county. So when we start to see indications, positive mosquito samples, we are then alerting those neighborhoods, sending out notices and advisories. We're ensuring that our treatment times are very short and looking for any sources in the areas where we're detecting positive activity, and then ramping up our surveillance, so setting out even more mosquito traps. If those mosquitoes that we're collecting, if the infection rate in those mosquitoes reaches a certain threshold, that may trigger a neighborhood treatment to suppress those flying adult mosquitoes that are infected. So we're trying to ensure that they're not out there biting people and making them sick. So shifting gears back to those invasive Aedes mosquitoes, you may have been experiencing them yourself or reading about them in the news, but they've been here in the county now since 2015, and they are really making it increasingly uncomfortable for the residents in the county. This is what the infestation has looked like as it spread through the county. We first got phone calls from Mission Viejo in the fall of 2015, where residents were complaining of day-biting mosquitoes. And in a matter of just a few short weeks, these are the areas in the county where they were popping up. The red polygons are the Aedes aegypti. That's the yellow fever mosquito, and the yellow polygon is the Aedes albopictus, which is the Asian tiger mosquito. And as I click through the years here, you can see that the spread was quite rapid. By 2018, the blue polygons is yet a third invasive mosquito, which is called the Aedes nodoscriptus, and that is the Australian backyard mosquito. Continues to grow, and last year this is what the distribution looked like. So we're now up to about 102 square miles in the county where these mosquitoes are, and they're quite difficult to combat and control for a few reasons I'll mention. To be specific, here is your city, and this shows the polygons of areas where we've detected these mosquitoes here in the city. We've had 10 locations of the Aedes aegypti, and then we've also got 1 location of the Aedes albopictus in yellow. And this is over the course of the last 4 years. So these mosquitoes love to live and breed right near people. They're mammal biters, and so they want to live in and around our homes. And any standing water sources in yards is fantastic habitat to breed mosquitoes. So, they can be quite cryptic, as you can see from the image here. So we encourage residents to be checking any and all areas for standing water. These invasive mosquitoes lay their eggs along the water line in plant pots and on plants themselves. Singularly, and then when wetted, they then hatch into larvae and then develop into pupae and fly off as adults, and that takes about 5 days for that to happen. But what makes them so successful is that those eggs can remain outside of water for an extended period of time, and so they're carried on pots and plants and other containers, which is how they can be moved about. And then when the pot or plant is relocated somewhere else, the eggs make contact with water when somebody goes to water it, and now you've spread those mosquitoes to a new area, which is why we've seen such a rapid spread. The eggs are really small, as you can see from these images here, and they really look like flecks of dirt. So it's important to, clean those out and to make sure that you're not leaving opportunity for mosquitoes to breed in any water sources in your yard. So just comparing some of the differences with the Culex mosquitoes and the Aedes mosquitoes. The Culex mosquitoes like large sources like swimming pools. Also, Aedes are in the backyard, like I mentioned before. Culex mosquitoes you're typically going to see at dawn and dusk. They do prefer to bite birds, whereas Aedes mosquitoes will bite you in the middle of the day, and they prefer mammals, so we are their favorite blood meal source. They're commonly referred to as ankle biters, and you'll see when they invade neighborhoods, upset people with lots of bites on their ankles and on their legs. Again, Culex, they lay their eggs in rafts, whereas Aedes lay theirs in individually. And again, those Aedes eggs can survive outside of water for a long time, helping them be very successful. And like I said, they will come inside and complete their whole life cycle in the house with you if they can find a source of water inside. And they readily will follow you inside too. Last year, we had 146 service requests from the city of Newport Beach. Of those, 136 were mosquito complaints. You can see from the map here, it's a list of, or dots showing basically the intensity of calls from different locations in the city. So most of the mosquito calls came from Balboa Island and Lido Island and the West Bluffs on the west side of the bay. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project that we have at Big Canyon Pond. So I'm going to show a video and kind of explain what's happening here. So in 2013, we had, leading up to that time, we had a really tremendous problem with mosquitoes, Thule mosquitoes breeding in the cattails at Big Canyon Pond. And we did a collaborative project with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. We worked to have approvals to install this siphon that you see. This siphon now gets installed every spring in order to help basically flush out the pond, which keeps the water moving, and that agitates it so that mosquitoes, it's less favorable for the mosquitoes. So over the years, as we've been using the siphon, it has cut down the control costs and the treatment costs, but we are still spending a considerable amount of money trying to address the mosquitoes at Big Canyon. Next one, thank you. So this just shows you, you can see the number of mosquitoes per trap night on the y-axis, and across the bottom are the weeks of the year, basically. So we tend to get peak mosquito activity at Big Canyon early spring. So in April, they're about week 16 and 17. And then we'll see it again peaking in July, and then starts to taper off over the rest of the year. But it's still a concern for us, and we are really very much looking forward to the next phase of the Big Canyon project, and that's going to be the pond itself. And once that is completed, then that should really mitigate any mosquito issues that we're having there. So appreciate the work that the city has done in all the subsequent projects and continues to do to help assist with this project as well. And I have one more slide. And just finally, just wanted to thank the city for being such a great partner for Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District. Please keep us in your newsletters and publishing alerts for us on social media, because when we do treatments in the area, that all gets pushed out in collaboration with the city as well. We are available to do outreach events and presentations. And we just want to make the residents, continue to raise awareness of our shared responsibility for mosquito control, and that they would practice all the things that I've discussed, previously, especially dumping and draining things around their yard, getting rid of those the pot saucers, because that's where those 80s mosquitoes like to lay their eggs. And then also making sure that people are wearing EPA-approved insect repellent when they are out and about enjoying whether their yards or some of the natural environments in this beautiful city, and talking to their neighbors as well. So I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Ms. Brenner?
I'd just like to ask Dave Webb if he would talk about the Big Canyon project and the coordination with your agency. And thank you. I'm enjoying serving on this as a trustee on this board because I'm learning so much. And mosquitoes were such a huge problem here last summer. It was just awful. And in fact, I wanted to advertise, I don't get any royalties for this, but the cortisone did nothing for the itching when you use the anti-itch medication, but the icy hot lidocaine pain relief works on those mosquito bites, and it's amazing. So I want everybody to know to buy some of this before mosquito season hits. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just real quick, as you know, the city's been working aggressively in Big Canyon, doing phases of reconstruction, getting rid of invasive plants, stagnant water, addressing drainage. There is one phase that we're still working with, we've been working with for years, and as we saw in the pictures, it's the ponds down below. The difficulty, as you may know, is that's all state property. It's Fish and Wildlife in there, and we've been trying to get them to get a project off the ground. So we'll keep working with them over the coming year to see if they can find a way to, when they need funding, and then obviously just to contract it. It is not city property, that one area, it's state of California property.
It's important.
Great, thank you. I see Ms. Dixon has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask what residents can do. Number one, is there any non-toxic repellent or elimination to eliminate them if you see them? And if we do see them, now that you talk about and I live on Lido, these little tiny things, I thought they were coming from my bougainvillea. Maybe they've infested my bougainvillea. But who should we notify if we see what we think might be evidence, the eggs?
So great
Or
questions.
anything.
Thank you. I'll kind of take it from the top and say that, EPA approved repellents are certainly the way to go. So they have a list readily available on their website. You can find a link on our website to that list as well. Additionally, the best thing you can do is check around your yard for any and all potential standing water sources, and eliminate those sources. And if you find buckets or something that maybe held water before, you're going to want to scrub that out, and that way you make sure that you kill the eggs and then store it in a dry place. And contact your neighbors and really make this a community effort, because you might not be breeding them on your property, but just next door, they could have a pretty large source, and those mosquitoes are going to come find you too. So the more you talk to your neighbors about it, that would be great. And then additionally, we at the district, please give us a call, and we're happy to come and do an inspection of your yard and help assist you in that regard.
Thank you.
Great, any other questions? I have one. So when you have mosquitoes in your yard, I guess they're coming from your yard, or how far could they come from a neighbor's yard? 2 houses down, 3 houses down?
They could, yeah. So these mosquitoes, the flight range is about 100 meters or so.
Oh.
So, they could just be a few doors down, or they could be, just up the street. But in terms of flight ranges of mosquitoes, these mosquitoes actually have a relatively short flight range compared to some of the other ones that we're addressing. Like, for example, the ones in Big Canyon, they're about a mile. So the folks up on the bluff there really feel it if there's a lot of mosquitoes coming out of Big Canyon. So,
And wind direction has something to do with it?
yeah, that can help them.
Right. Okay, we have another question from Rich Howard.
Hi, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Rick Howard. I'm the district manager over at Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control. Just one piece of anecdotal information I think you might find interesting is that back in 1946, when the Orange County Board of Supervisors determined that there needed to be a mosquito abatement district in Orange County, it had a lot to do with Newport Beach because the mosquito volume was so high that the bluffs and the areas in and around Newport Beach were non-livable. You could not live there because of the mosquitoes. They were so pestilent and aggressive. And so that Newport Beach is one of the reasons why we were initially created, along with the fact that many service members were coming back from World War II and with malaria, importing it into the region, and we didn't want to have any local outbreaks. So those were the primary reasons. Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, some of the coastal areas. Thought you'd find that interesting.
Yes, thank you for the history.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Still dealing with them.
Yeah, still today.
Yes.
New ones even, so.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're on to number 4, and this item is a discussion about development impact fees. We have Mr. Georges here.
Good afternoon, Mayor Avery and City Council members. I'm Simone Georges, Community Development Director, and with me also I have Jim Campbell, who's the Deputy Community Development Director. We do want to talk to you about development impact fees. This is just really a discussion. We want to daylight what they are, what they're used for, and just get some of your feedback as we go forward with this subject matter. So what are development impact fees? They are fees charged to new development. They're not ongoing fees that are charged to our residents or businesses. And these fees that are charged based on new development are there to fund facilities that are needed to serve those new development projects. For example, your police stations and your fire stations, and I'll kind of show some examples of this. These fees are not for operation or maintenance cost, and they're not serving existing development. This is all based on new development as we go forward. So why do we want to talk about the development impact fees? Well, really it's mainly because of our RENA units. We are working on updating our housing element, and we know that we have to plan for a lot of housing units as we go forward. So how do we pay for our services, our facility needs as we go forward in planning this housing element? In addition, there may be other services, other uses that the community or the council will like to see. So the future growth of the city will result in a demand for our current services. As we go forward and as we plan, the development agreements that we've negotiated in the past will have less opportunity to negotiate those. They're not going to go away, but there'll be less opportunity, and I'll explain why. So first, I just want to kind of showcase some examples of development impact fees. And so I just went on the City of Huntington Beach's website, typed in development impact fees, and sure enough, they have development impact fees. So you can see there on the top boxes, that top row, I got a red box and a yellow box. So the red box is for residential projects, and that yellow box is for commercial. And you see on the left-hand side that purple box where we talk about law enforcement facilities, fire suppression facilities, your public library, and parks. So those are facilities, and you go across those rows, and they charge either on a per unit basis or based on a floor area for the commercial and the kind of their industrial uses. So this is just one city, one example. Went on the City of Orange website because I know that city pretty well. They have impact fees also. You could see the top 2 rows, which is interesting. It's park fees. They have park fees for condos, and then they have park fees for your for-rent product. Then towards the bottom there, they got a library fee, and then you could see fire protection facility fee. You could see that they actually have a dormitory fee because they got that Chapman University there, and towards the bottom, they actually have a police fee. So again, just showcasing just what some other cities have done with impact fees. So we went and surveyed all of our Orange County cities, and this is a pretty good survey of what each of the cities have. If the city's not listed here, they probably don't have anything more than park fee and traffic fee. And again, park fees and traffic fees, that's something that most cities have in Orange County, and I'm going to talk about ours. You can see down the left-hand column there all those cities that do have some level of fees. You see Anaheim has library, police, and fire. Our coastal cities, Huntington Beach has a number of different impact fees. Laguna Niguel, Laguna Beach, they have some fees. Orange does, we talked about that. And then you can see San Clemente, another coastal city, has a fee for police, water, and sewer. Again, most of them have park and traffic fees, and these are just the additional fees that we're seeing in the county. So what's the benefits for an impact fee program? Well, it really does help, partially helps, funding CIP projects as we go forward. So if we want to replace a future fire station, impact fees can help support that. They wouldn't pay 100% of it, but it'll be supporting that CIP project. It is easier for staff to administer. It's not negotiable. It'll be studied, and I'll talk about that here shortly. And it's either on a per unit basis or based on a square footage basis. It is transparent for the development community. They can look up what the fee is and put that in their pro forma. And from a budget projection standpoint, it actually helps with our budgeting as far as what those revenue sources are. And it's allowed by state law. There's the Mitigation Fee Act that is part of our state government code, and it's allowed as far as impact fee programs are. So how would you go about developing an impact fee program? Well, you have to study it. You have to understand what is your future growth. You have to determine what is your needs, what are your facility needs, and that's really a needs assessment. And how much of that growth is going to be towards new development. You have to identify all your funding sources, and you go through, and a consultant will do all this, kind of go through an analysis, and it says, for what your needs are, what your projected growth is going to be as you go forward, the established fee per unit or floor area, it will be X or Y. And it's through this nexus study, as we call it, and that's how you determine what the impact fees are going to be. So from a development type, you have your residential units, and then you have your commercial, your non-residential. Typically, your residential are on a dollar per unit, and for your non-residential, it's $1 per floor area. Just want to remind the City Council on, for accessory dwelling units, you've already passed a resolution that waives all fees, permitting fees, plan check fees, and any fair share fees for ADUs. So what fees do we have? And I talked about most of the Orange County cities have a fair share fee, so those are your traffic fees, and then we have a park fee. Well, the fair share fees was created long ago, and actually before 2007, and they are adjusted based on a CPI. And it's probably good that we go back and study our fair share fees, and we do it after our circulation element is completed. Currently, we're about to kick off our traffic modeling based on the RENA units. So I think it's a good idea, and we recommend that we study that later throughout this year after our circulation element is completed. And then our park fee, we already did an update on the park fee, but what's interesting is that our park fee only applies to subdivisions. So they only apply to condos. So if somebody wants to build a for-rent product, we don't have a park fee for that. As we shared, City of Orange has a fee for both. We don't have a fee for both. We just have one for subdivision. And we can do both, but we all have to study that. So what type of impact fees could the city study if that's the decision by the City Council? So I list all those on the screen there: police, fire, we have library, we do have lifeguard facilities, recreation, which is our parks, and also we have community centers. We're going to start talking about in lieu fees for affordable housing. We should probably go ahead and start studying the affordable housing fee, because we're going to need to implement something as per our housing element. We talked about our fair share fee, which is our traffic fees. We probably should study that after our circulation element is completed. And for utilities, we don't have connection fees. So if you have a 300-unit apartment building that wants to connect to the water, our main water system, we don't charge a fee for that. And our utilities department is asking the City Council if they would consider for staff to go ahead and study water and sewer connection fees. So let's go back to development agreements. What happened to our development agreements? Well, first of all, let me explain what those are. So that is a contract between the city and a developer, and it gives the city vesting rights for the development project in exchange for either the city gets improvements, right-of-way improvements, or fees. And those fees are either calculated or negotiated. And we've done that for several projects. And that's based on what we have in our municipal code, which says that any legislative amendment, so think of a general plan, and a project that has 50 or more residential units will require a development agreement. Well, if we're planning for a lot of housing units, and we're going to put that in our housing element and our land use element, there's not going to be a need for a general plan amendment anymore. It's going to be almost by right zoning. So our DAs will continue. They're not going to go away, but once our general plan is updated with all the housing units and any other types of uses that we want, there'll be less opportunity to negotiate these development agreements and yet less opportunity to negotiate any types of fees. Hence, we think that we need to start thinking about these impact fee programs because we're going to need some type of revenue source as we go forward to provide those services to those units. So I just want to do a little quick overview here on the impact fee program. What are development fees? So that, again, they are one-time charges on new development for impacted facilities. Who pays? It's the project developer or the property owner, whoever's proposing that new development. And how are the fees established? And it's established through a study, so we call that a nexus study. And the fees are used for capital projects or facilities, and they cannot be used to address existing deficiencies or ongoing operations. So some policy questions that we have for the City Council. First, are you interested in studying an impact fee program? And we would hire a consultant, and that fee is about $13,000 per impact, per subject or per fee that we want to study. And what impacts would you like us to study? Would you like to select, as I listed there on item 2? And I think your handout is it was numbered incorrectly, but on the screen there, item number 3, any specific projects you want us to focus on or not focus on. Again, ADUs, you've already passed a resolution to waive fees for ADUs, but we have a lot of single-family development, and we know the future is multifamily. And then we do suggest that we do update and study our fair share fee program. Even though it is updated based on CPI, we haven't really studied that for a while. And again, I just want to note for the City Council, whatever we study, we're going to come back to the City Council. This is nothing set in stone. This is just more of a discussion. And if we actually study a program, we'll bring those results back to City Council for further discussion. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions, Council? None? We're good. Thank you so much.
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, Diane, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, are we having any discussion whether we should direct staff to conduct any study? Are we going to recommend staff to do that?
Is that a question? Personally, I think we should direct staff to get this study going and start looking how these fees are going to impact long-term budget.
One question I have maybe for Simone. Are you still in earshot there, Simone?
Yes.
Could you enlighten us on what the history of the city was? Because compared to what the other cities in Orange County, many of them have established impact fees for various types of categories as you've described. Do you know the history at Newport Beach, why we haven't? Why the city has not really, other than the 2 you identified?
I think we because of our charter section 423, we really had a kind of a slow growth type of charter. So development was really contained. So hence we've never really had a need to develop an impact fee program. Most of not all most, but some of that development that we've seen lately the last 5 years has really been general plan amendments. And we've had those opportunities per our municipal code, because our municipal code actually said anytime you have a general plan amendment and over 50 units, you will enter into a development agreement. So we've been comfortable with that process. And again, Charter Section 423 kind of slowed that growth down. What's changed obviously, is those RENA units. And as we see going forward, we're not going to be able to contain those housing units. Clearly, staff, we got direction from council to go back and relook at those housing units, and we're doing that now, and we're working on that. But we don't think there's going to be opportunities as much as we go forward with future development agreements. Hence, that's why we want to talk about it today.
So, if with all this new development presumably is going to be coming forward, or some of it, a lot of it, but we're certainly planning for it. And so there'll be infrastructure impacts, police, fire, just as you identified. If we did not implement a fee program, what would be the consequence, generally speaking, on the general fund?
Well, if we didn't implement any fee program, then when we need to replace a fire station or when we need to replace our police headquarters, we're going to have to find that revenue source either through general fund or state funds or federal funds. It becomes harder to pay for these facilities as we go forward. And we're going to have, most likely, we'll have to dip into our general fund. Instead of pivoting and saying, well, let the development project pay for these facilities, the city and the taxpayer will pay for it through their through general fund fees.
You have often said in talking about RENA that the RENA numbers of 4,900 is equivalent to about 40 years of development, residential development in Newport Beach. So we've been developing residential units. Who has paid for the fire stations and the road infrastructure improvements out of those developments?
And I'll pivot to Mr. Webb if he has some additional information, but mostly it's been general fund monies. This last fire station project, I believe we went through, we're putting it as to a bond. So we're going to borrow the money for the latest fire station 2 relocation. That's to that old McDonald's site. But mostly it's just been through the general fund, through the taxpayer money.
Well, I mean, just thinking of the last 40 years of residential development in Newport Beach, how were those additional services paid for? We've been absorbing them, or were there development agreements largely with the development companies that were building the residential homes?
Certainly. There are a lot of, it's really the multifamily projects that kind of the bigger project with general plan amendments. They've paid developer fees and public benefit fees through a development agreement. So those funds were funding a lot of these projects too. As we go forward, those development agreement opportunities will become less and less.
Okay, thank you very much. But I guess my original question is, what do we do with, are we going to be looking at this further? I would support looking at this further. I think there's a lot of uncertainty going forward with this proposed development, and we should be informed what the future may bring.
Great.
That would be my position.
Thank you. Ms. Dixon. Ms. Brenner.
Other woman. I was just thinking, since this is a study session item, that we obviously are not voting on it, but do you need a show of hands from us to show that we would indicate that we would like you to study this and bring it back to us?
It would be good. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other comments from council? Mr. O'Neill?
So I want to just run through some of the finance on this. So we're looking at, when it says 13,000 per fee impact, and then we're looking at the potential for seven different fees. What I'm trying to figure out here is, it looks like, a major difference between, there's got to be a major difference between a study for police and fire versus water and sewer, just because it seems like water and sewer would be a lot easier to study than police and fire services.
It's possible, but when I talked to the consultant, they said you just plan for the 13,000. That's kind of gives you that ballpark. So I didn't get into the details of, if police and fire are more expensive than the water and sewer.
And then on the affordable housing side, that's to set the in lieu.
That's correct.
What would we need to study in order to determine the in lieu affordable housing fee?
It'll be, from a staff standpoint, it'll be good for us to study that. Typically what we've done is we've negotiated that through development agreements. I'm not really sure what the baseline would be. I think a consultant would look at comparables to other agencies, look at what we've done in the past, and just provide some recommendations.
So if we went ahead and, so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, well, let me back up for a second. I like, the laws are changing so fast on all the affordable housing that I don't remember the answer to the question I'm about to ask, which is, if you had, let's just say it's 100% affordable housing, are you allowed to charge any of the fees, any of these impact fees on affordable housing?
Well, you wouldn't be able to charge the affordable housing fee, right? Because that's
True, I agree with that
obviously you're
statement.
putting the housing
Yeah,
in.
no, I'm talking police, fire, sewer.
Yeah, and that's something that can be a study too, because if you want an incentive to have more affordable housing, you can have waivers, I think, of different types of fees. So,
Yeah.
that's an incentive, right? That you don't have
Once you
different
get
types of the impact fees applied to certain types of housing.
If it's okay, I'm going to have Deputy Director Jim Campbell kind of talk towards that.
Thank you, Simone. I think the affordable housing fee is a little bit different. This would be a fee in lieu of actually constructing affordable housing. And so
Right.
there's analytical assumptions that go into that analysis. And, our past fee was about $26,000, and that was about a decade ago. So that would need to be spruced up to see what that cost would be. And the purpose of that would be for the city then to go use those funds to leverage and create affordable units. Not necessarily the full cost of building a unit, but we could provide, as Grace said, incentives. We could waive some of these fees as a concession to make a project pencil out if it's an affordable housing project. But if it isn't affordable, then they would probably have to pay the full fee, all the fees.
Yeah, and so what I'm trying to figure out, I apologize. I'm trying to wrap my head around this, because if we do this, I think it's pretty clear it increases the cost of building in our city. So if we did that in a way where we're increasing the cost of building because we've got fees for police and fire and water and sewer that previously hadn't really existed outside of a development agreement, and then we're making it more expensive to build affordable housing on the back end. So I know we'd be looking at an affordable housing fee in lieu fee. I know that we've been talking about that one specifically for a while. And this is a tough one, because I'm sitting here on the one hand saying I don't I don't really like adding new fees, especially to make things more expensive. And then on the other hand, we're also sitting here saying at some point the state of California has created an unfunded mandate where you've got 4,800 housing units going into a substantial amount, probably impacting the airport area, where we don't have a fire station, where we don't have police resources allocated there in a way that makes sense. I'm loath to just start putting all of that on, the potential need for a new fire station on the general taxpayers that are getting crushed by the state of California. This is an interesting issue. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add to that. I think for us, I think the important part is to do the information gathering. So what is the real impact? And so what goes from there, I think there's a whole host of ways to move forward, or not. But I think just knowing the information, I think is important, particularly at this stage where we're seeing these RENA numbers and and potential impacts associated with that. To quantify that more, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, the water and sewer connections make sense to me just a matter of that enterprise fund. The police and fire, I think, are going to make sense as well, just given the strain on resources that a potential 10% or more increase in our housing stock would have. I think we've got to do the affordable housing in light of the RENA discussions. And then, I don't know. I doubt that I don't really see the value of a library fee or even potentially the recreation fee. But I would certainly support a review of police, fire, water, sewer, affordable, and I could be convinced on recreation. And then probably wouldn't include those on ADUs. I would support looking at, and then I probably honestly wouldn't support it on single family either, but I would support it on multifamily, office, retail, and industrial. Thanks.
Any other comments, council? Seems to me some of these are pretty obviously direct fees, like sewer fee and all that. We know what that cost is pretty concretely, but then it's teasing out if you build a new fire station or some major piece of infrastructure, it won't all be probably related to development. There'll be other parts of the city that will benefit from that station or that facility. So that would be figured in.
That's correct. That's correct.
Not the whole weight of it on.
Right.
So then it's a matter of response times and all that, right? Just figuring that out.
And it's going to be, what are going to be our needs? Do we need another fire station in that airport area? And so we have to determine that as we go forward, and that's going to be part of this analysis.
Sure. And if we are building these communities, there might be an opportunity to do a park for those folks so they don't have to drive far. I mean, these things I think will become sort of more obvious. It's hard to tell now, but I would imagine we're going to build this kind of house, a lot of multi-tenant housing. We'd want to have some place for them to get out and play besides the streets.
Certainly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm certainly in favor of looking at it, and I think Mr. O'Neill made a good observation on sort of limiting it, but I don't know if other council members want to chime in at this point in terms of the scope of staff's look into this.
We might also want to see, I don't think we've gone out for public comment
Yep.
as well.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
I support what Mr. O'Neill has laid out. I just think that more broadly, just to repeat his words, the state has mandate, an unfunded state mandate, and we are embarking on this major change to our city that will result in we have to pay for all these people who are ultimately, now it may not be for many years, but given that there's a lot of interest by a lot of builders to come into Newport Beach and kind of have by right, not kind of, but they have by right to do this kind of development. I think the prudent action for us would be just to know what the future impact, this is just future planning, strategic planning on how we're going to manage our financial obligations to provide and maintain the service levels that we are providing today. I think it's prudent planning for the future. This could start hitting us in 3 to 5 years. I think we really need to know what the potential impacts are, whether we could isolate library, police. It's almost across the board. What is going to be the impact to our general fund with, it's not just 4,900 housing units, it's 10,000 more people, plus potentially living in our city, within our city limits in the next 10 years. So I guess I'm not looking for precise, I'm just, and that's going to be hard to speculate of how many new people will be moving into Newport Beach over this next green-up period, 8 to 10 years. But we should have the finance committee should ultimately looking at this if we do the study, and obviously they would review this, this is really, and I don't think I don't know, please someone tell me if any other city has really projected these costs that are going to hit the cities that are struggling just to pay our unfunded pension. So I think this is really serious long-term financial planning that we should at least be aware. We're not voting on any fee increases. We certainly are not advocating fee increases. We're just trying to understand what the financial impacts of 10,000, potentially 10,000 more people living within our city limits. How do we deal with that? So I would support what Mr. O'Neill said, and I would recommend a study and no further action other than that, just to get a sense of what's going to hit us in the future, in the near future. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Brenner?
I'm wondering if you would reconsider excluding single family from that, Will. I think that if we create a different asset class here and we start to penalize the multifamily, and then we have another problem that we are now building or approving plans for single-family homes with an accessory dwelling unit that we're encouraging them to do, and I would hate to discourage them from doing that just in order to avoid certain fees?
Sure. So let me give you my thought process on that. I think the reason that we're looking at this in the first place has everything to do with RENA. And so if the thought process is basically, we couldn't possibly grow to 4,800 new housing units on a single family basis. We don't have the land for it. It's just not possible. And so we've seen our city in large part grow up to 45,000 housing units using the single family model, but at some point you just run out of land. So if we were growing by the single family model, it would be slow and steady, and we would have a grasp on it, and it certainly wouldn't get to 4,800 units or more in an 8-year period. So the only way for us to get to 4,800 units in an 8-year period would be ADUs and high density development. And so when we're looking at when we're looking at ADUs, I mean, you can work through the ADU side of things because it's going to be a one-off on most people's properties. And so if we had a rash of ADUs in CDM or Newport Coast or other areas like that, it's already serviced by the police department, and they can kind of watch that as a gradual buildup. I don't think we have any belief that we can get to 4,800 ADUs in the next 8 years, for example. But if we did, that would be spread out throughout the city, and we'd have a better idea of how to cover it just using existing models on the police and fire. And then in terms of the sewer connections, that's not nearly as difficult on a water or sewer connection because you already have a residential right there, and it's basically an extension. My concern is really more focused on creating much higher density. And so, and what I mean by that is, if you're going to build up 4,800 units, you're going to be doing so using multifamily in large part. And when you have multifamily, you could potentially put 100, 200, 300 units all at once, which you start doing that, you eventually get into the thousands in a certain area. So let's just take airport area, for example. If you get to a point of massive geographic changes for 2,000, if you put 2,000 units, for example, into the airport area in the next 8 years, that's that may genuinely require a new fire station just to keep up with that, because you're probably not just putting in multifamily. In order to do that, you're going to need to have a buildup of potentially retail. If I'm guessing grocery stores are included as part of retail in that definition. Yeah. So you have you're going to need to build up grocery stores, which are fairly large, with a lot of people coming in and out of it. You're going to have to have a lot more restaurants. You're going to have a lot more amenities that are going to attract people into the area, and because if you don't, you're going to create a lot more traffic. And so my thought process, and I'm sort of developing that as I go, but I wanted to at least explain. That's why, for me, single family, if we were just building this up one by one on a single family basis or an ADU basis, that's not going to have a severe sudden impact. And by sudden, I mean, 5 to 6 year horizon, which in the grand scheme of a 100-year city is sudden. Anyway, my son, who's 6, would differ, but anyway, but that's my thought process on why, if I'm going to be focused in on something, it's going to be the impact of large buildings, large things that suddenly create a shock to the system on the aggregate, whereas single family and ADUs just aren't going to do that to us in the same way. So that was my thought process on multifamily. So I'd still exclude ADUs and single family from what I'd want us to be looking at. But that's why that's my thought process.
Mr. Plum.
Thanks. I love the discussion on this, because clearly this is going to get heated up here when we bring it back to council. So thank you for that. So, if we look at the City of Orange's calculations, it's coming out to be about $14,000 for a residential unit on top of the building. Nobody likes fees. I actually hate them. But I think as far as we're looking at this, I'm always a fan of more information rather than less. And I think if we're talking about spending $100,000 on this fee study, I want all the information. I don't want to exclude anything. I think it helps bring back something so that we can look at more and make that decision from the best possible source. That's the only reason I would push to bring everything into this study. I want the single family, I want the ADUs, I want to see everything we can bring in so that we can sit and have that discussion and have those real numbers in front of us from that consultant. So, I agree with everything being said on the dais, and I agree with Councilman O'Neill about this, but I still like the information, and I think if we're looking at a $13,000 cost for each additional number of these and $100,000 total for the study, the way I look at those numbers is if we were running these now and the Mariners Mile project had these impact fees on it, we'd be looking at about $500,000 in impact fees going forward on those right now. And so that's something that's not too shabby to have that discussion about up here. So, I'm in agreement with not dropping this on the single-family residents, but I still want to see that information on a piece of paper, just so I think we have the best information up here to make the best decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. And I concur with those comments as well, just for staff's information.
Yeah, and that's fair. I see that. I see that point. I don't think for a second I'm going to support adding on impact fees on ADUs or single family, but if it doesn't cost really all that much extra, let's throw it in. So okay, no, that's fair. I understand the points now from Ms. Brenner and Mr. Blom. I get that.
Great. Now we'll go out to public comment. So, here we go. Mr. Mosier.
Mayor Avery, members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. We heard in the presentation several references to the general plan. I just wanted to remind you that the last chapter of the general plan is called an implementation program. It's something that I believe you review each year. And in that implementation program 30.2A is titled Development Impact Fees. And the promise made in 2006 when the program, actually the program was supposed to be updated annually, but it's not been updated since 2006. But the promise under that heading of development impact fees ends by saying that the development fees will be evaluated annually to ensure that they are sufficient to support new infrastructure and the fiscal balance of the developing land use mix. That mix can sustain the city's ability to operate and maintain the existing infrastructure. So I share the concern about the cost of the studies, but given that promise from 2006, we're certainly a little overdue on evaluating the fair share traffic impact fee.
Thank you. Do you have any other public comment in the room? All right. Anybody on Zoom? Okay. All right. So we have direction now. We're good.
Maybe just get a show of hands. It sounded like the consensus was to move forward in all the areas, if that's
Yep.
correct. If everyone just raise their hand.
So I'm sorry, that's not quite right.
Okay.
My suggestion was not to include library and recreation, but which would save $26,000, and to instead do the impact studies on police, fire, water, sewer, and affordable housing with all of the potential development that is listed under item 4.
Is everyone in agreement with that? Or would people like to have those other items considered? Let's see. So 2 are in agreement with that? And then is everyone else would be supportive of moving forward with all areas? So 4.
That's 4 with Councilmember Dixon, Brenner, Mayor Avery, and Councilmember Blom.
All right. All right. Mr. Hart, do you have an announcement?
Take comment first. Public comment. Public comment.
We've had a little public comment. I think we're
On agenda and non-agenda items.
comment on non-agenda items as well. Sorry.
Mayor Avery, members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. And speaking of fees, as a non-agenda item, I wanted to try to speak to you again about the increased trash recycling fee that you recently imposed on the residents who receive our city's free curbside trash collection. As you know, I don't believe the city has the authority to impose an added fee for the property tax funded free trash disposal, but the city seems to have come up with a theory that you have the right to charge for the difference between what it costs to recycle the trash versus what it would cost to send to the landfill. The point I want to try to make again is that recycling should not be thought of as being totally a cost burden, because the people who do the recycling receive revenue from the items that they manage to recover from the waste stream. In theory, they could actually be buying the trash from us rather than charging us to dispose of it. We hear from time to time at your regular meetings about the city's solid waste working group. I have no idea who they hear from or what they hear. I suspect they were not alerted to the study session this morning at the Costa Mesa Sanitary District, where CR&R was asking for some cost increases, and the district staff was recommending denying those. And I wanted to point out that according to the staff report, what CR&R charges the Costa Mesa Sanitary District for the curbside trash collection there, and for recycling the waste that they collect that is not sorted anyway, is $54.98 after they correct for the revenue that they generate from that trash. And that if that same trash had been sent to the landfill, the price today is $59.67. So it actually costs less to have CR&R process it through their MRF than it would to send it to the landfill. And that's for unsorted mixed waste. The organic trash that they collect, CR&R is charging $75 per ton for processing that. Again, that is a little bit more than the $60 it would cost to the landfill, but not by much, $15 more. So the fee study that the increase in Newport Beach was based on addressed none of this at all. It didn't tell us how many tons we're collecting, how much we're paying per ton to have it processed by CR&R, and whether that is more or less than it would cost to have it landfilled. So there's something very defective about the rate study, and I hope when you come back with a future one, it will be done more thoughtfully. It's not obvious that the cost of recycling is a great deal more than landfilling. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a Zoom call? Zoom or call? Go ahead.
Hoyanit, go ahead and proceed to speak.
Good afternoon. This is Hoyan. Yeah, I was so excited that we can zoom into the council meetings now, but I hope the sound come across fine because I couldn't really hear Jim Mosier clearly. But anyway, I also want to say that I have always appreciated the variety of options the city has offered for us to participate in council meetings. So thank you. Okay, so today, Ocean Protection Council hosted a webinar on plastic. The Coastal Commission speaker said they started tying single-use plastic with issuing certain permits. He gave a few examples. For Ritz-Carlton Half Moon Bay's beach access, they require the hotel to ditch single-use plastic footwear. Last Thursday, during my presentation to the Water Quality Committee, I mentioned that OPC and the Coastal Commission are aware that at the time the city was applying for the $1.68 million grant from the OPC for the trash well, we just started looking into source reduction. But 3 years later, nothing has happened. So at some point, the trash well will need a permit from the Coastal Commission. And OPC is willing to assist the implementation of an ordinance that's based on reuse and reduce. So it seemed to be carrot and stick. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Hoyen. Do you have any other public comment? Oh, all right. I think we're good.
Thank you, Mayor Avery. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to meet with legal counsel regarding one item of anticipated litigation as set forth under agenda item number 4A.
Mr. City Attorney, do I announce my conflict now before?
Yes, if there are any conflicts, those will be announced now.
Would you mind announcing for me?
Yes, so Councilmember Muldoon has a conflict related to potential business interest, and Councilmember Blom has a conflict related to real property interest. I went ahead and did yours too.
All right. I got excited about that.
Okay, we are recessed until 5. What do you think? 5:40? All right. For the regular meeting. Thank you.